Breaking tonight, new information on the investigations into multiple attacks on American soil. Hello and welcome to this special Sunday edition of Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us. We begin in New York City and the manhunt for the person or persons behind an explosion in Manhattan last night and a second device that was planted just a few blocks away. Let's get right to it with Brian Yenis live in Chelsea with the latest on the investigation. Brian?
Good evening, Judge. We begin now with a new report from the New York Times citing two law enforcement sources that they have now have identified a person of interest in this investigation. Now, Fox News cannot independently verify this information, but the Times says two law enforcement sources say that this person, however, is not being seen as a suspect at this time. We're learning this as we also learned last night that the authorities received a 911 call from someone threatening that more bombs will go off in New York City. The New York Post reporting that an unidentified male said, quote, "I'm looking at the explosion down the block. There will be more." Authorities have been sifting through surveillance footage from businesses, asking the public for cell phone footage and tips, and gathering forensic evidence at the site of the bombing here on West 23rd Street. And meantime, authorities have also been analyzing a second explosive device, a pressure cooker hooked to a cell phone and wires found 4 blocks north on 27th Street. This device was found intact, which is an important detail which could provide investigators with vital clues. Now, authorities are also investigating whether or not the explosion in New York is connected to Saturday morning's explosion in Seaside Park, New Jersey, the Jersey Shore, when an explosive device blew up in a garbage can or bin there along a route for a charity run supporting our U.S. Marines. A law enforcement source telling our Rick Leventhal police believe the explosive devices in New Jersey and in New York are believed to be from the same person. Now, this, as just 3 hours ago, police investigated and then moved a green Subaru Outback with New Jersey license plates just an avenue away from the blast behind me here in New York City, towing it away for further investigation. Earlier, the FBI and NYPD were also investigating a black Toyota Camry on 39th and Madison, with the left side of it with tons of shrapnel wounds as well as windows broken, which appear to us presumably that this vehicle was broken or had received wounds, shrapnel wounds and broken windows from the blast itself. Again, we have not received confirmation from that, but the FBI and the NYPD were all over this black Toyota Camry on 39th and Madison. Obviously, an active investigation and a crime scene here as they are trying to piece together all of these pieces. You have 3 different sites, 2 here in Manhattan and obviously the one in Seaside Park. And that's the latest that we have here.
All
Judge?
right. Brian, will you say that law enforcement sources are confirming that they've identified a person of interest? Is that person of interest, do we know someone based upon the car that either the Toyota that or the Subaru, or is it based on video? Do we know what it's based on?
We do not know what it's based on. That New York Times report is based on 2 law enforcement sources. It's an important point that you bring up, though. That Subaru happened to be behind us and happens to have New Jersey plates. We can't put 2 and 2 together. It's just an important detail to mention here, though, obviously, that this vehicle that obviously is of interest to investigators happened to have New Jersey plates. And as investigators are trying to find connections between the Seaside Park explosion and what we saw here on 23rd Street, it's a detail that we should obviously keep in mind while they try to figure out whether or not this is the same person. But again, to reiterate, sources tell our Rick Leventhal that it is the same person that is involved in putting both explosives, the one just 2 hours south of here on the Jersey Shore, as well as the one here in Chelsea.
Well, clearly, if
Judge?
they believe, Brian, that it is from the same person, then that pressure cooker that was undetonated on 27th did contain a treasure trove of, either fingerprints or serial numbers or a lot of information that could have done that. Interesting. 24 hours out, we've learned a lot. Anyway, Brian Yenis, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. And joining me now is the author of Defeating Jihad and professor of strategy and irregular warfare, the Institute of World Politics, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. All right, Dr. Gorka, you heard it just as I heard it. Now they've identified a person of interest. They have made a connection between the New York and the New Jersey items that were used, whether it's the pipe bomb in New Jersey and the pressure cooker in New York, or whether it be the IED in the dumpster. What does this tell you?
Well, it's very interesting fact. If you go back in time a few years, people associate the pressure cooker IED with Inspire magazine, Al-Qaeda's magazine, in which the instructions were given on how to build that device. And that's the device that was used by the Tsarnaev brothers in Boston. But people should also be aware that whilst they used 2 pressure cooker bomb devices in that attack in Boston, when they were being chased by the police, if you recall, they actually had multiple pipe bombs with them that they used to try and kill the police officers that were chasing them. So it may be a similar modus operandi, the combination of the pressure cooker bombs and the pipe bombs. So this could be somebody who's following exactly the same playbook.
And Doctor, recently, according to information in some of these ISIS publications, one Dabiq, and they're now talking about calling people or young people to commit crimes, high concentration areas of unarmed civilians. Now, when you look at New Jersey, that was supposed to be a 5K run. Clearly, people wouldn't be armed for a 5K run. And in a residential area in New York, you know, what does this tell you? And I'm curious, now that I'm thinking about it, if the forensic analyst might be able to identify the person putting it together, might he be able to identify the product itself based upon these magazines or publications saying what kind of equipment to use?
Yeah, so let's remember the reports from New Jersey were that this Marine Corps run was delayed. There were so many applicants, the race start was delayed, which meant that it was simply by chance that you didn't have a lot of people going past. And also 4 devices were in that bin. 1 exploded, the 3 other pipe bombs didn't. So that's just a miracle that people weren't killed in that instance. When it comes to what can be done now, it's a huge asset for the FBI. This pressure cooker bomb will be in the FBI labs. They will be taking it apart meticulously. And that's, in fact, how we identified one of the accomplices of Richard Reed, the shoe bomber. They found a palm print inside the bomb, which led them to an individual who assisted Richard Reed in Paris. So we could really have a treasure trove of evidence because that second device did not detonate.
Okay. And what about what is going on with some of these, you know, these incidents, 3 incidents in 3 different states, New York, New Jersey, Minnesota. And we haven't even talked about what happened there with the individual who was shot dead by an off-duty cop in a mall where this individual stabs 9 people, 7 men, 2 women, and asks one at least if they're Muslim and talks about Allah. A connection?
It could be. I mean, just look at the macro trends. Since September, there have been scores and scores of similar knife attacks in Israel. They actually call it the knife intifada. If you look at the attack in Nice, the attacks in Paris, if you look at Brussels, we're seeing a new approach by potentially ISIS mobilized or inspired groups. They're saying, look, you don't need something fancy. You don't need a 9/11. You don't have to hijack a plane. Steal a truck. Buy a machete, get some black powder, make a pipe bomb. It's low cost investment with high dividends in terms of terror, in terms of the effect on a local population. There is now a New York, you know, an NYPD cop on every corner in New York now, in Manhattan. That's what they want us to see. They want to see that kind of reaction, that fear generated. It's different from Al-Qaeda. It's cheap, it's practical, it gets the effect they want. The war is already here, Judge.
Well, and the reaction is not really the issue. We've got to be ahead of them. We've got to be in a situation where we can anticipate. But how do you anticipate the lone wolf, assuming that it is?
Well, I don't believe in the lone wolf phrase myself. I think that's designed to make you disconnect the dots. All of these people are connected because they're connected by the ideology of jihad. How do you defeat them? It is exactly as you said. It's proactive. It's the kinds of structures and programs that the NYPD developed after 9/11 that Mayor de Blasio has been trying desperately to shut down. You've got to locate these people before they go kinetic. You've got to surveil the local areas where they're being recruited. And if that means mosques, it means mosques as well.
Indeed. I couldn't agree with you more. Sebastian Gorka, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Judge.
All right, and as we've been reporting, investigations are now underway into the attacks in New Jersey, New York, and Minnesota. Joining me now with reaction, former FBI Assistant Director who ran the Bureau's New York office, and my friend James Kallstrom. All right, Jim, you there?
Yeah, hi, Judge. How you doing?
I am fine, thank you. All right, is this a new era in law enforcement where we have to now start worrying about a different kind of criminal?
I think we've been in it for a while, Judge. I just think we're going to see more and more of this type of stuff.
Well, go ahead.
You know, because as you and I have said over and over again, we're getting sick of talking about it between ourselves. We don't have a clue who comes and goes into the country. We've got these sanctuary cities. You know, we got all these people coming that aren't vetted, and now the president wants to include more. And if Hillary's elected, she wants to double that number. I mean, it's just insane what's going on.
Well, you know, one of the things that occurred to me is that, you know, with all of the talk about local law enforcement and all of these alleged problems that we have, you know, at a time when we are being confronted with probably the biggest threat to the greatest number of Americans at the same time, you know, we need to militarize, not demilitarize our local police.
Yeah, what a horrible time to demoralize the police departments across the whole United States. What a horrible time to have you know, the Black Lives Matter crowd that want to kill police, you know, into the White House for numerous visits.
Well, but not only that, I'm talking about having the ability to have the equipment that is more military-like than, you know, demilitarizing and not just demoralizing.
No, you're right. They've taken a lot of that back. And the reality is we need more cops. We need, in these states that are run by rational people, you know, we need to get carry permit guys, you know, to carry. We need to encourage that. You know, if you're in a mall here and you got your 3 kids and the next thing you know, someone is stabbing your little children, are you going to hope that there's somebody with a weapon nearby?
The thought itself is horrible. What does, you know, in terms of the forensics and in terms of what we're learning now, Jim, we're just learning that the local law enforcement, of course, working with the FBI, is looking for a person of interest or a person of interest. What do you think that might be about?
Well, you know, I was talking this morning with Maria Bartiromo, and I said, you know, I think this case will be solved relatively early, next 2, 3, 4 weeks. You know, because of all the cameras in New York and the fact that, you know, the FBI has the best database of bombs in the world. You know, they've gone all over the battlefields in Iraq and Iran and pretty much all over the world and fingerprinted all this stuff. And they're going to find prints. They're going to find DNA. They're going to look at the way these things are made, and that's probably going to give them a hint, you know, whether or not the same people's making these bombs.
And you know,
we're going to see more and more of this, Jeanine, unfortunately.
And that is a sad commentary. But, you know, as more of these magazines are very slick, glossy publications by ISIS, Dabiq, and the rest of them, they actually identify the types of products to use, the type of wiring to use, the call to use it among unarmed, big civilian populations. I mean, that in itself is almost a clue as to where the person might be getting his or her motivation from.
Yeah, without question. And, you know, and this nonsense, this double talk of people that I saw some talking heads just on before you that said, you know, the New York City bomb, and they've excluded the fact there might be international terrorism. And that's nuts. I don't know what it is. You know, and all this gibberish about that. Of course it's an act of terror. You know, at this point in time, you know, let's find out who did it, who's roaming the streets, and they could do it again.
And, you know, Jim, it is absolutely amazing that somehow using the word terrorism is almost a fearful word to some politicians. But we don't have time to get into that. I want to thank you, though, Jim Kallstrom, for being with us tonight.
Jeanine, thanks for keeping this on the front burner.
All right, God bless thank you. All right, and next, Donald Trump is ripped by the media for using the word bomb last night, while Hillary Clinton gets a free pass. Next, Trump senior advisor Boris Epshteyn standing by live with a reaction. And we're also going to talk about the tightening race as the debate showdown looms. And speaking of the race, we'll break down the states that could decide the election with pollster Lee Carter. We're going to find out if these latest attacks could have an impact on the voters. Justice rolls on in a moment.